Hi everyone, it's Shell from Scrap Secrets and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is part of the May Card Hoppin event for the Handmade Happiness Facebook group, and our challenge was to create masculine cards using ombre or monochromatic tones. So for the card that you saw that we're going to create, we're going to work on the accordion piece first. You're going to take a piece of cardstock that measures 4 1/4 and score it at 3, 5 1/2, 8, and 9 1/2 on the 11-inch side, and I'll have all these measurements down in the more information section for everything. You're going to cut a piece of that same color cardstock to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, just like you would do for a card base, and then the pattern paper is 1/4 inch smaller than that. So you're going to need 4 strips of pattern paper for this insert. I actually did a 5th one, and again, all of those dimensions will be listed below in the more information section, so be sure to check it out. So you're going to start with the smallest end, and you're going to fold it back and then do the accordion style folds on all of these, making sure that your edges are as straight as possible. So what I like to do is make sure that once I fold it over, the top and the bottom line up with the edges of the cardstock piece. And then I'm just going to continue to score that down because you want to try to keep it as flat as possible. So I scored on all of the edges, and this is how the mechanism is going to work. Now we're actually going to change it up a little bit. I did a couple of different things. I changed my mind when I started doing this. And I had a couple little frayed edges, so I took my pair of scissors and just went on the edges and cut off those little pieces that were kind of like, almost looked like paper fuzz. I'm going around the edges of those light colored cardstocks or pattern paper with some Distress Oxide in tumbled glass. It really doesn't make any difference, but I thought that it might help hide some of those little frayed papers. I guess I probably need a new blade in my paper cutter, and I just, sometimes it just frays paper, especially when it's really thin for some reason. So I'm using the Honeybee Bee Creative Glue to glue these 2 pieces down. I'm alternating between 2 colors of cardstock, and I love it because it has different shades of blue in both of them, and I wanted to do a monochromatic look for this. So this is actually going to be a Father's Day card. I know masculine cards are very difficult. I actually had a whole other design in mind, and then I switched it up. I was planning on doing something with a suit and tie for Father's Day, but my dad doesn't wear a suit and tie anymore. He hasn't in a really long time for work. He retired several years ago, so I didn't think that would be the most appropriate one, so I went with this. Although green is his favorite color, he does like blue. But I didn't have any green pattern paper that I really loved. You could also make your own pattern paper with stamps or stencils for this technique as well. So I could have done that, but I'm not sure if I'm going to actually give this card to my dad or not, but I had that in mind initially when I made this. So now I am just gluing that piece of pattern paper down to what I think at this point is going to be the base. So that's a piece of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, piece of cardstock, and you can see there are so many different ways to do it. You can have the accordion open on the left, on the right, or you can have it open and out to the top. And that's the way I really liked the way it looked. I thought it looked pretty cool just pulling it up like that, but you can have it angled or facing, the accordion facing whichever way you'd like. So I'm making sure that that is securely in place, and because I used wet glue, the back of this is a little bit warped, so that's why we're going to do something different at the end. So I'm just showing you the Kiss the Cook stamp set from Honeybee Stamps. I got this, I think, in the last haul that I did, and I haven't used it yet, so I cut the top off and I decided I was going to use them. There are a bunch of phrases in there. There's some happy birthday ones, there's grilling ones, and then there's also some Father's Day, and it says, "I love you, Dad," in 2 different fonts on there. So I thought that one was really nice. So I'm just laying out the sentiments how I want them. And then at the bottom, I'm actually going to put 2 sentiments together to create the inside sentiment. Now, because the font on this one that I'm going to stamp down first is very, very skinny. It's a little bit more difficult to read on camera. In person, you can see it because it does stand out from the paper and you can see it a little bit better. It was a little bit hard to photograph because of the pattern paper. So if I was going to redo this, I might have done more of that light pattern paper, or or maybe added a insert in there, like a white insert, to stamp the sentiment down on. But I wanted it to match all three, and I didn't think it would look good with white paper or something else, or a solid color paper on top of that pattern paper on the top. So once I pour that ebony embossing powder, and this is Martha Stewart embossing powder, which is super old, it's probably like 10 years old, onto the paper, I just quickly wiped away a couple of stray embossing powders that were there and heated that up with my Wagner heat tool on level 2. And once that was done, I am going to go back in with some more of that light kaolin clay mask that I have been using for kind of like an anti-static powder for any embossing, and it does such a great job. I have very, very few stray embossing powder pieces, and it's usually the worst with black embossing powder. For some odd reason, black embossing powder loves to stick to anything, and this, you really couldn't see any of the stray embossing, so I'm really, really happy with it. I do think I'm going to get a different tool for that because sometimes it's a pain in the butt to keep wiping the brush off all the time. But I'm using Versamark watercolor ink to ink up all of the sentiments, pressing them down, but I don't want to press them too hard. These ones are a little bit thicker. When your lines are really thin, you don't want to press down too hard because it splays the letters, and then especially if they're real thin and too close together, some of your letters are going to spread and kind of look like one letter instead of two separate ones. So again, I'm doing the same thing and sprinkling the ebony embossing powder on top of all of it, wiping off any excess, making sure that I've covered everything as well as I can. You can use a stamp positioner with this just in case you don't get a perfect stamping of it. The Happy Father's Day didn't get stamped down perfectly, but I don't think it matters. You can see the dad and the happy both are really, really thick, so it's a little bit easier to see the sentiment than the one that's on the inside. So I'm going to go ahead and use that same heating tool on level 2 to heat up all of the sentiments and emboss them, and I think those ones, like I said, came out much easier to read, especially on camera. So now I'm taking a piece of, or a card base that's pre-made, that's 5x7, and I'm putting that lighter pattern paper down because I thought I needed to tie it in some other way to the back, and it's really just to cover up. I got some nail polish on this one when I had taken it down to my sister's. I brought down a bunch of card bases for the girls to work on, and so that was covering that up, and then I'm going to glue the card down on top of it. But I don't like the way that it's kind of a card and then another card, so I'm actually going to cut that back flap off, and that will be the card for the day. I would have left it that 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. However, the back was a little flimsy, and because I had used wet glue, you could see the wet glue behind it. So I glued it down onto that piece, and that's the card. I hope you guys enjoy this. I hope you get some ideas for masculine cards because I know that they are some of the most difficult cards to come up with a design for. For some reason, masculine cards are just really tough for most people, me included. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you have comments or questions, please feel free to leave them below. Here are some more pictures of the card, and I will see you guys again real soon for another video. Bye!